Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
It's time for the Bonnie Sher Show, a whirlwind of wit, wisdom, celebrity, and the boomer life. With a little bit of this and a lot of that and so much more you don't want to miss, here's Bonnie.
Well, hello, and thank you for tuning in and calling in and joining in our conversation. I'd like to send my thanks to Wayne Cobham for my super duper theme music. I'm Bonnie Sher, your host through the world of celebrity, the world of boomers, and the world of type 1 diabetes. I have with me today my first guest is the author of a book called Old Blue Eyes and My Fickle Fate. His name is Ray Rappa. And we have with us as our Type 1 co-host, Mike Berry. So if you have a question or a comment, please follow the hashtag BSherRadio. That's hashtag BSHER Radio on Twitter. Now settle in, please, and say hello to my first guest, Ray Rappa. Look at this crowd you drew today.
My body lies over the ocean.
My mother sang that, but she's not with us anymore. Ray, first of all, thank you so much for being here with me. Well, you've done a number of things before writing this book, and that's, if you want to know everything that Ray has done, well, I suggest you buy the book. But my first question was going to be, at this point in your life, why would you want to write a book? And then, okay, before you answer, and then I got to the very end of the book where you explained that to me. So would you please share with our listeners where you were in your head and in your heart when this project came to your mind and then to fruition?
Absolutely. Mainly my son. I have a son who is 33 years old. He's very creative. He's in the business. He's a creative monster. I call him a creative monster. And we didn't get to talk too much about. He was always asking questions, but when they're young and they don't really get it all, And very few times are they willing to really delve into, your past. So that's the main reason I said I got to write a book to let this guy know my past, the whole thing, the whole shebang, And I think I did it.
Well, there's a lot of shebanging going on, I must mention. Pardon me. I was very interested in the time frame of when most of this is set, and you make a lot of references to Tin Pan Alley. I don't know that everybody is really familiar with what Tin Pan Alley was and the esteem that it held in the hearts for those who were part of that time. And could you please share with us?
Sure.
What was Tin Pan Alley? When was it? Where was it?
Many years ago, when really at the beginning of music publishing. Tin Pan Alley became the world of music publishing. Within 2 or 3 blocks and 2 buildings, mainly 2 buildings, every single publisher of music was located in those buildings.
Was that 1650 in the Brill?
1650 was the second. The Brill was the main one.
Uh-huh.
That was like 1619, I believe. And the Brill building was where we all hung out in the restaurant downstairs. And then Jack Dempsey, the famous world champion fighter at the time, he owned the restaurant. It was right in the Brill, right outside.
Was he present?
Yeah, he was still alive. He was still there. I got to say hello to one of my father's idol, you know,
Right.
and later, of course, mine, you know. But yeah, everybody who was anybody, you know, spent every single day meeting and negotiating. And
Do you know where the name Tin Pan Alley came from?
there's various stories on that. One I read about was where someone was walking up along the street there, and they heard some clanging of pans, you know, piano playing and banging of pans. So they say, "Wow, listen to those tin pans," you know. But it's actually they will hear the banging of the piano, you know. And of course, in the Brill building, every single, it was a pretty big building, and every room was either a publisher or a little recording studio or a recording studio like this. And so everything took place right there.
So all the song pluggers and
Yeah, oh yeah, every song play. I mean, that's one thing I really cherish. You know, I got to meet some very, very famous, talented songwriters who wrote the American Songbook. You know, guys who did have at least one song that was a monster hit, you know.
Wow.
Actually, my very first manager, was a guy named Saul Parker. He wrote "This Love of Mine Goes On and On," which, of course, Frank Sinatra recorded. And actually, Frank and his manager at the time, Hank Santacola, a guy named Hank Santacola, they had a music publishing company called Barton Music. Eileen Barton, the owner's daughter, she made quite a name for herself. But at any rate, Saul wrote "This Love of Mine," and Frank Sinatra and Hank, they actually put their name on songwriters, you know, along with Saul, you know. And I think that was a lot of entertainers ended up doing that just to get royalties along with the writer, or for the writer to get the opportunity to have his song recorded, you know. And that took place. That probably still takes place. I'm sure it does.
well, as I'm sure you're starting to get now, a lot of this book takes place and revolves around the world of celebrity, the world of music, the world, and then the moves living both on the East Coast and then coming to the West Coast. And it seems like with every geographical change, there comes a new part to this story. We are first introduced to a young man who is a singer, who's in the Air Force, who you think you're setting up a whole thing, and then everything changes. What happened when you left the Air Force? First of all, how long were you in service?
4 years.
You were in 4 years. And you were singing at that point, and that's really what your gig was it not? They didn't have you flying fighter planes, did they?
Absolutely. I remember in basic training, I snuck out of my barracks because it'd be beyond the roll, you know, the bedtime, and to go audition for some little talent show, you know. So I go and I audition, you know, and I auditioned for a guy named Stu Ostro, who was a young man at the time, who had previously worked as a young man. He was the producer of the Arthur Godfrey talent show on radio.
Right, sure.
And of course, I used to listen to that all the time, you know. And he heard me sing and wanted me to. I was going to be in a show that he was presenting, but my orders to leave that base were already passed, and so I couldn't be in the show. So now I go out and I become a communications expert, you know, at a different base. And of course, every time I saw an opportunity to sing, I'd go and audition. So I eventually ended up in Goose Bay, Labrador.
Of course you did. The perfect place for an Italian boy.
Yeah, right. Nothing but snow, ice, and barren.
And manicotti.
And barren land. No manicotti. But anyway, there was a band up there, big band. And they played in the style of Glenn Miller, which all the bands did in the Air Force, And I auditioned for a singing contest. There was 3 or 4 of us, 5 of us. And I think I came in second at the time. But in the audience, there was the leader of the band. And he liked what he heard. And he said, I want to hear you audition with the band, as a vocalist. Of course, I got excited. And I went to the rehearsal room the next day. And the first time I ever saw, or not ever saw, but ever sang with an 18-piece band, swinging band. And I went through about 10, 15 songs, all the songs that they had in stock, and they liked what they heard, and boy, that was great. It was just a great experience. And from that day on, I ended up singing with a band, the Air Force Band. I sang with them for about 1.5 years, and then I ended up in Texas, where the Air Force has a show called Tops in Blue every year. Thousands of guys, enter it in various categories. Mm-hmm. And I had entered it once with a vocal group. And while I was up in Goose Bay, Labrador, a couple of the guys in the band.
What did you do wrong to wind up in Goose Bay? Gotta know that story.
It was quite a community. We met a lot of interesting people up there. But at any rate, we had come in second. And every year I would also submit myself for the vocalist category to win the vocalist category. Well, I didn't do so well in Labrador as a vocalist, but we did okay as the group. But when I went to Texas, again, I auditioned for the Tops in Blue show. Well, I went all the way. I won the whole Megillah, and that was great. And it took the 2 finalists, and we ended up competing along with other categories in Las Vegas, And the judges were all famous Las Vegas people, And I won, and that was just a great thrill,
Well, you've led quite a thrilling life, it seems, all the way through. And then you go into the life of being an agent, which is so counter to everything that you've talked about in your life and been involved with. Where did that come from?
Well,
I know you came from management of the military, but
in my final months or year in New York, I met a wonderful girl, beautiful girl, who was very talented. We got married, and her career was taken off as well as mine was also taken off in New York. I was making some headway, and so she had to go to Las Vegas to appear in a big show. And so I decided to go along. I said, what the hell, I might as well get out there and see what I could do out there, So I did, and I stayed with her a while in Vegas, and then I said, well, we're close to California, so I'm going to go to California to see what's going on out there. Of course, it was starting all over,
Mm-hmm, sure.
And at that very time, you have to understand that in the early 60s, the music was changing drastically. The band singers, my style of singing, the American songbook vocalist, that was going out of style. It was clubs were turning into discotheques, and
I'm painfully aware of this.
You know that, right? So there was, so we outside of the Playboy clubs and a few other places, it was hard for a guy who didn't have a hit record, to work really, So I was out here and I needed a job, and I wasn't singing, and someone offered me an opportunity to spend some time in an agent office, and said, hey, you'd be a good agent, you know all about music, blah, 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 I did. I knew quite a bit. So I said, okay, I'll give it a shot, and I started working with him, and he got in a lot of trouble, and I ended up handling his clients, ending up with his clients. And then that led to my becoming fairly successful in promoting and helping quite a few actors, become quite famous, actually.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself because I am by no means finished talking to you. But if everything that you're listening to is starting to spark your interest, I seriously suggest that you get a copy of Ray's book. I happen to be fascinated with the Tin Pan Alley era because I just missed that. I mean, where I come in age-wise, everybody told me I was born 20 years too late. And, you show me a man who's ahead of the time, I'll show you a guy with bad timing.
Everything is timing.
Right? So I totally can relate to that aspect. They never knew what to do with me because I would have been great had I been 20 years before, but I was now. You also, on the cover of your book, you discuss sage reflections and words. Can you give our listening audience an idea? I mean, there were a few that I thought were quite marvelous. What brings up those reflections in you? And what are you thinking about as you're reflecting on your reflections?
Yeah, that's pretty difficult because I when I come up with those things, I write them and then they disappear. It's like
Is that to make space for the next one?
Everything, every sage reflection is based on, of course, my experiences.
But does that go back to the sun also? Is that why these reflections are there? Are they in there as well? For him to share in how Dad...
Well, not only for him, but for everybody.
Understood, but I'm wondering if...
Yeah, I think anybody who...
Because it really does give an insight into what's going on in your head.
Yeah, everybody who reads each reflection will get something out of it, But I do want to talk about the how I got to know Old Blue Eyes.
That was where we were coming to. Good time, please.
And we were talking about Tin Pan Alley. Well, I became what they call a demonstration record singer, And there were still a lot of great American songbook writers around, still writing great songs. So they would call a guy like me, and I was I became probably one of the top 3 that were called upon to do those type of things, So I ended up doing quite a few of them. I did a few for Frank Sinatra and with his company, Barton Music, where I met the writer, Sal Parker, who became my manager for a while. And so Frank had heard, some of the songs probably, and I don't remember any of them being recorded by him. And then I also did I did one for Barbra Streisand, which became very big. And at the time, the fellow playing the piano was a 16 or 17-year-old kid named Marvin Hamlish.
Yeah.
So, and she ended up recording the song that one of the songs that I did. It was called Free Again. And
what a great song
so that was quite interesting. And Frank I never really met Frank at the time, although he had heard of me through Sal and through a couple of other people, And then when I came to California and I was bored stiff, with my first few weeks here, I didn't know what to do with myself. I saw an ad where he was recording, and I said, let me go down by the studio there and see if I could just see him, look at him. I wasn't interested. I felt I wouldn't be able to talk to him, So I go down and I go by the entrance to the studio, Western Sound Studios down there right down here on Sunset. And there was a guard at the door, and he said, "Well, what do you can't go in there. Sinatra's going to be recording, and the guests are all inside and everything." And so I just started chatting with the guy, and he was kind of discouraging me. And the door opens, and who's standing in the doorway with a guy named Jilly Rizzo.
Oh, my.
And now, Jilly Rizzo was Frank Sinatra's right arm and his best friend. So he sees me, and he remembered me as a young guy who kept walking by his nightclub, going on my way to the Colony Record Shop, which we spoke about earlier. And he would always say hello to me, and I'd say, "Hey, kid, how you doing?" You know, and okay, I'm going to work now. And that happened almost every other day. I'd be walking by, he'd be sitting outside Jilly's nightclub and smoking a cigarette, and he'd say, "Hey, kid, how you doing?" So when he sees me outside the door, he says, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" Like that, you know. And I said, "Well, I want to see, can see Frank." And he said, "Come on now, you want to come in and hear him?" I said, "Do I want to come in here?"
No, I'll just stand here, thanks.
No, just stand here and listen from outside. No, so he brings me in, and there's no place to put me because all these famous celebrities were sitting in the control booth, and so there was no room in the control room, the engineer's room. So Jilly takes a chair, a folding chair, and he takes me inside the studio, the actual live studio, like we're sitting in right now, and he says, "Just sit here." So now Frank comes in. Of course, Frank is singing, and Frank sang with a partition in back of him a lot of times, where for some reason he wanted to be separated from the orchestra, and that day there was about 60 musicians behind him,
Mm-hmm.
and so when he was singing, he had to look like, as far as our engineer here is, in front of me, and he'd have to look right at me, and he didn't know who I was, He had no idea who I was. I could have been a hitman, So after he sang a couple of songs, and he had to walk by me every time and practically rub up against me, Finally, he gave me.
Who is this guy in my studio?
Right. Well, finally, he gave me a wink, that blue-eyed wink, And I said,
Ooh.
"Oh boy," I said.
Ooh-ha.
And now I felt, "Oh boy, now I'm in. That's it. He likes me." He gave me the wink.
Well, of all the things he could have given you, I'd say the wink is about the best shot you had. Ray, thank you so much for being here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I certainly would like to recommend, if you want to read more about these days, I know I'm fascinated by it. A lot of the boomer generation, we've heard about these days, but we weren't there. And if you want to know what those days are all about and what this man has added to the whole stratosphere, I want you to please pick up a copy of Old Blue Eyes.
Okay, they can get it at www.rayrappa, RAPPA.com. And you can get my website, and all the information is there, along with pictures, some of the book quotes, and a lot of music you could listen to, and like that. And now I'm on ebook, which is Amazon, Kindle, Amazon. You could purchase it on ebook. It's Old Blue Eyes and My Fickle Fate.
All right. Well, I'm going to have that up on my site as well. So please, thank you again so much for being here. It was just my pleasure to be chatting with you here today.
My pleasure also.
You are listening to the Bonnie Sher Show. Join the conversation. You can follow the hashtag BSHER Radio on Twitter. Coming up is Inside My Blue World, plus a shout out from my soapbox. My soapbox is my take on who got it right and who should be terribly ashamed. Let's go to break with a song to pay tribute to the late Glenn Frey of the Eagles. I can't tell you why. Take it away.
Tearing our love
talk about the songbook of our lives. Welcome back to the Bonnie Sher Show. Joining me in this segment is Mike Berry, a member of the T1D community from the great state of Illinois. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Bonnie. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Pretty good myself.
You know, one thing we haven't discussed yet is you're there in my hometown. I'm a Chicagoan
Great
myself.
place to be.
It certainly is. Well, except when it's freezing cold, and then it's not so wonderful. But
Well, you know,
I'm a
it
wuss.
doesn't kill you with hunger.
Mike, you've been living with T1D. Would you please share your story with us?
Let's see. Well, I was diagnosed when I was in high school. I weighed about 150 pounds at 5'11" and lost 30 pounds. And my parents were like, oh, he must be on drugs or something, which was the exact opposite. I needed to be on drugs. So then one morning after drinking tons of Kool-Aid and eating Captain Crunch, I threw up. And Mom's like, we're going to the doctor. My blood sugar was high, so then I went to the hospital and stayed in the hospital for a week, which was kind of a drag, and was plunked down with diabetes. And I think my parents did some research and found a state-of-the-art endocrinologist who, at that time in 1984, was like, you need to test your blood sugar 4 times a day and start on, it was either Humulin N and Humulin R, Novolin N and Novolin R, one of those products, which were new then, and they're kind of old school now, but they worked pretty well. And I was 16 and went off to college a couple years later and just kind of rolled with it. And I didn't have a lot of what I consider to be problems, but I had a bunch of hypos and passed out, but I kind of ran with the social circle that passing out wasn't entirely uncommon at Midwest land-grant university and University of Illinois in Champaign, and played in rock bands and had a pretty good time, made the dean's list, and went on from there. And, life went on. I grew up. I kind of moved away from a lot of medical intervention, was like, I know what I'm doing. I can take care of myself. I'll keep rolling along, and ended up with kind of an insulin-intensive regimen of my own design without a lot of consultation, and moved through that, and I was doing okay. I had a number of years where I didn't go to the doctor at all, which was probably not the smartest thing to do, but I was like, well, Walgreens will refill the prescriptions and I can just keep rolling along, and just kept rolling along, got married, started having a family, and then the doctor said, nope, you aren't coming to see me, so you're fired. So then I had to go see a new doctor. So
Fired you.
over the years doing all that insulin, maybe it was insulin abuse a little bit, but whatever. I thought I was keeping my blood sugar in pretty reasonable control, and I'd gained a bunch of weight. So I looked at the glamour shots of the doctor and kind of picked a big doctor, and figuring he wouldn't bust my chops too much. So then I went in to see him, and he's like, wow, your A1C is 5.8. That's really good considering your history. And so that led to kind of a partnership, and he was always like, you ought to try an insulin pump. You ought to try an insulin pump. And then my weight just kept going up until I peaked about 275 pounds in, I think, 2004 or 5 in the winter, and then started working out, trying to lose weight on my own. Again, just figuring, I'll just eat less food and kind of winging it. It was very adventurous and lots of ups and downs, which everybody with diabetes knows. But at that time with RNN, and this is in 2004 and 5, when the treatment regimen had changed, there were new products available that actually worked better, but I was totally oblivious to that. Things went along. I had some success losing weight and getting into kind of a workout routine, doing martial arts, and then my blood sugar numbers went up. My A1C went up. So that, I'm like, well, gosh, I should do something about that. So I got an insulin pump and aimed at a technology solution, which my wife had been suggesting, you should get an insulin pump for a long time. We knew a guy who sold insulin pumps, who was connected locally to some people who are famous nationally and internationally now, designing artificial pancreases. And so I knew about insulin pumps, but I was, oh no, I'm fine. I know what I'm doing. So I met with a friend's wife who had diabetes and had a pretty good pump success herself, and she explained how it worked, and she spoke my language, and I'm like, that's it, I'm going to try it out and see what happens. And then some of that was the martial arts thing. What do I need to do to take it to the next level? What do I need to do to improve? And so I tried it out, and I remember sitting through insulin pump training going, should I have 2 tacos or 3 tacos at lunch? The whole time, and I'm like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah, should I have 2 tacos or 3 tacos? And so, damn it, I'm going to have 3 tacos. I've been sitting there for 2 hours getting the whole spiel. I was exactly what was in the manual. I know what I'm doing. And I had 3 tacos, and a couple hours later, my blood sugar was 85. I was, wow, nice. This thing really works great. And it just took off from there. It really worked well for me. I had pretty, again, like normal-ish A1Cs, not quite normal, but 5.8 for a few years with a pump. I got
That's
a
pretty
CGM
respectable.
when I decided to, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I mean to
No,
run
I
on
said
there.
no. I just did that to you. I think that's pretty darn respectable. 5.8.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and it worked out okay. And so then a couple years later, we were at some wild party with our friends, like, let's run a half marathon. Woo! So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not doing Taekwondo anymore. We moved to Chicago. And so I was trying to start running a little bit on the trails around here. There's a lot of excellent forest preserve trails around Chicago. And, okay, I'll run a half marathon. So there was some concern there from my spouse. And what are you going to do out there running around in these trails by yourself all the time? So I got a CGM. That pushed things, and my A1C went down when I started knowing what my blood sugar was more all the time. I could keep an eye on it. I could identify, geez, after lunch it's running high, or before breakfast it's spiking up every day, or I could, take steps to then program the pump to cover my life more effectively, and then I could turn it down when I was going to go for a run. And I tried 5 miles, and I tried 6 miles.
Well, I think it's wonderful that you've done that with the devices that you have and challenged them while you're being challenged yourself and finding even better ways of utilizing these great, I go back 40 years old to, throwing that little tablet into a vial of urine and watching it bubble and trouble and boil.
Right.
So to hear somebody like yourself who has come in at this point, and it's funny to me when I hear you talking about old type of insulins being, I go back to the bovine insulins,
right?
Beef for pork.
Right, and I came in at that point where the human insulins had just been invented, and my doctor was on the ball and said, this is the new stuff, but you want to use this, try it out. Went from there. So I had some urine testing equipment, but I don't do.
No, I was pretty happy to get rid of that too. Mike, let's do this. Let's go inside my blue world for a couple of headlines making diabetes news. I'd like to get your thoughts, please. So let's take a listen.
You bet.
Hello, and welcome to the My T1 Group podcast, Inside My Blue World. I'm your host and Type 1 Diabetes Crusader, Bonnie Sher. This is my weekly share, headlines from around the globe and across the net. Some will pique your interest, inspire, or frankly tick you off. But all are topics for discussion with our diabetes care team and the T1D community. You can find the links on my blog at bonnieshare.com. In this installment, conversations about complications. All of the headlines are from the online community diatribe.org. My first headline share: what are the biggest challenges and opportunities in diabetes recaps a panel discussion at the European Association for the Study of Diabetes. Participants noted the declining rates of diabetes complications. My second share, talking about complications, author Carrie Morone Sparling covers the shame and stigma associated with the complications and the importance of creating a network of friends and allies. My last headline share, the 4 key times to see a diabetes educator, is a deep dive into the critical role this healthcare advocate plays when complications arise. The article includes instructions on how to find a diabetes educator. That is my weekly share. For the links to these headlines, please visit my blog at bonniesher.com. Until we connect again, may your A1Cs be low and your resilience high.
Okay. Hello, Mike.
Yes.
I know that you have said to me that you have been actually very lucky in that you have not been plagued with any serious, at this point, complications. But we all do know, because we've all been told what can come, what can be. I think personally the reason that we're seeing less now is because of what we were just talking about. All of this new technology, which can give us a much more accurate picture. And I don't know about you, but I can't wait to see about the artificial pancreas and being able to employ that and to have something on board which would know if I needed insulin or glucagon. You know, it's just amazing to me. Have you dealt with friends who have complications? What's your history with this?
Well, I have my very mild, way far away from the retinopathy, so I'm not totally out of the blue from complications. And I have other issues, slow healing, in the 2011 Chicago Marathon. I scraped my knuckles on this guy's running belt in October, and it really didn't get better until June of the following year, which is, for a scrape, 9 months, and who knows what sort of funky stuff was in the guy's running belt, and yada, 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 and through the winter. I've noticed recently, shoveling snow, which I did yesterday here in Chicago, when it's really cold out, my fingers burn.
Yes. Very
painfully. I can get 3/4 of the driveway done, and then my hands are on fire, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to suck it up and finish. But, is that just because it's cold out, or is it because I'm old, or is it because the nerves in my extremities are frazzled after being cooked in, hyperglycemic soup for 30 years? I can't exclude the possibility, and I'm not a doctor anyway, and it's not a recognized complication, but it concerns me. And I know lots of people in my online network of friends, which has been a great thing to find, something I found when I decided I'm going to get an insulin pump. I was really into fantasy baseball at that time, and I'd discovered online message boards as a good place to get information, get kind of a pros and cons of answers to questions. And I said, what if there's people out there talking about diabetes online? So I looked, and lo and behold, stumbled onto a message board and started talking to people and started interacting with people. And I've since sort of closed the circle by meeting many of those people in real life. I've got a local dinner group. I've been to the Diabetes Unconference in Las Vegas last year, which was really a spectacular time, just to connect with people who speak that language, because you're talking that language in yourself or to yourself in your head all the time. You don't ever talk to your wife about it or your kid about it, or you talk to them about it a little bit, and they know, oh, Daddy's low. He needs
But
something.
nobody understands it like another T1.
Right. You know, like, well, if I eat this food after pre-bolus for 15 minutes, I have to walk around in circles until they start chowing down, and it's going to crash out, then it's going to fly up, then I'll have to fix it. And like, yeah.
Oh, Mike, you're so right. Mike, I need to wrap up this segment, but before I let you go, could you please let our listeners know how they can follow you? I think your blogs are wonderful. How can they read you?
I'm really not a huge blogger. I hang out on Facebook a lot.
Okay.
And I hang out at 2diabetes.com/forum is a message board sponsored by an organization, the Diabetes Hands Foundation. They also have a similar organization, s2diabetes.org, for Spanish-speaking people with diabetes, which I've run into people who have connections. Lady I ran marathon training with a couple years. She's from Colombia, and her father has type 2 diabetes. I told her about it because she had questions about what was going on with him. She looked at it and she said it was an excellent source of information.
Yes,
so
they do great work.
2diabetes.org.
Mike, I want to thank you for being here with us today, and I want you to take good care, continued good care, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the near future. And I want to thank you one more time for being with us.
The crowd goes wild.
Always for you, Mike. And if any of my fellow Type 1s would like to be my co-host on one of our episodes, it's really very easy. That's easy and simple. Sleazy. Just give me a shout out on my website at bonniesher.com and let me know. It's just that easy, and you can be a co-host here with me also. I hate to end this segment, but it is time for my soapbox. First, I'd like to give a shout out to one family who is certainly doing their best to advance diabetes innovation. This was reported by the Wall Street Journal regarding Bruce Maslish, who is the Chief Technology Officer of a company called Bigfoot Biomedical. And what they're doing is they're developing, and I quote, a management system that automates insulin delivery and makes, quote, life easier, safer, and healthier. Boy, am I up for that. Mr. Maslish says that what motivated him in this line is that not only is he married to a type 1 diabetic who happens to also be a type 1, Dr. Sarah Kimball, but also their son Sam also has type 1. And so with Dad's background in quantitative finance, it sort of became a family affair. And you can follow Bigfoot Biomedical on Facebook or on their website, which is bigfootmedical.com. Amazing what people can do for themselves. Now, my shout down. I don't get it. I don't understand how the governor of a state who has the health and survival of his constituents should be forefront in his mind. And clearly, Republican Governor Rick Snyder of Michigan didn't get that memo. Bad enough that he's known about this for over 2 years. And everything, he's actually the one, it had nothing to do with the city. It wasn't up to the city people. He brought in a couple of different people to try and work on this problem, and this is what they came up with after getting clearance from Governor Snyder. I think there's something terribly wrong there. And now he wants to keep his job so he can make things right. Well, too bad, sport. If you have an opinion, visit my blog at bonniesher.com/blog and sound off. Well, that's my show for today, and I hope you'll return next week for another 50-minute trip down the world of celebrity and type 1 diabetes and, of course, the boomer life. I would like to thank my guests again for today. I would like to ask you to please visit me at bonniesher.com. You can follow the number 1 Bonnie Sher on Twitter and like the Bonnie Sings Lena, Lena, Facebook fan page. A note of thanks to Corey Bone of Crown and Anchor Jewelry for outfitting me with this incredibly lovely citrine necklace, hand-wired, hand-done gold wire holding this puppy together, and it's gorgeous. And you can get to Corey Bone and to Crown and Anchor Jewelry by going to bonniesher.com. Go down to the bottom of the page and you can click and you'll be able to shop. I love that part. So now for my friends, new and old. You may have figured out by now that there was a very, very special role that Sammy Davis Jr. played in my life and in my career. And if there are speakers up at the pearly gates, well, man, this one's for you. Take us out.
Whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, whether I find a place in this world or never belong, I gotta be me, I gotta be me. What else can I be but what I am? I want to live, not merely survive. And I won't give up this dream of life that keeps me alive. I gotta be me, I gotta be me. The dream that I see makes me what I am. That faraway prize, a world of success, is waiting for me if I heed the call. I won't settle down, won't settle for less, as long as there's a chance that I can have it all. I'll go it alone, that's how it must be. I can't be right for somebody else if I'm not right for me. I gotta be free, I've gotta be free, daring to try to do it or die. I've gotta be me, I'll go it alone, that's how it must be. I can't be right for somebody else if I'm not right for